DJ's community, welcome back to another video here with Kyle Chris. I know it's been a little bit since we put out a an actual deck profile, but I wanted to put out some content here. That was, since we're kind of in a, I wouldn't say a lull period for myself, but don't really have too many events coming up other than going to be doing the online Gen Con events. But one of the decks that I've been playing a lot of, and you probably have seen it on the channel a little bit, hopefully by now, is the Mechkbura leader here. So this is a updated list for Mechkbura. This deck did get a ton of support. I think in the right atmosphere, this deck could pose a pretty big threat to a lot of different decks. Really, Gohan in 21. A very similar reason as to why Shroom and Salsa did end up topping in the Madison Regional a few weeks ago. This deck does a very similar thing with being able to interrupt the drop area effects, which is a huge thing for those two decks in particular, like Expert 21, the normal 21 deck a little bit, not too much, but Gohan in particular. Very, very powerful deck for now. This is just a main board. I did not go through like a side, so you might see some cards that are not in here. That would be, you know, I would put stuff, I think like things like Petrification I didn't put in here, but those are things that you would have in a best of 3 you know, list. So this is just kind of a how your main deck could potentially look for this deck. So I'm obviously I don't have the side deck because that's all obviously just going to be depicted on that event and what's currently going on in the meta right now. But I do have a Z deck here, which isn't really much for this leader as of right now. Who knows, maybe in the next set we'll get some really cool black Z support, hopefully, fingers crossed. But this leader here, so this is the metal leader. I'm not using the standard one because it's put away somewhere, and I just like how this leader looks. It's much cooler. So when this card attacks, you are a wish leader essentially, so you do get to look through your life and your deck for 2 dark Dragon Balls, like so. You look through your life and your deck, you shuffle any area that you look through, and you add them to your hand. Now, the one big issue with this deck is the deck's Waking Condition. You do have to be at 7 balls in the drop, so you don't have a secondary Awakening Condition, which is a little bit rough. But your Awaken is a draw 1, restand 1, and your opponent warps a battle card from the drop area. This is a very important thing to keep in mind. You can sequence it particular where your opponent does put a card in the drop and you can get that extra warp, which is a big part of what makes your deck very good. On this side, you're a normal swing draw 1, but then you have 2 different activate effects. So you're a wish leader, but you're not technically a wish leader. It's very strange. So you bottom deck a card, and you get to choose one of the following effects. You either get to A, take a 4 or less battle card, negate its skills, or you choose a 4 or less battle card on your opponent's board, negate its skills, and then you add it to your board. You gain control over it, and you switch it to active mode. So cards that have removal effects, unless it's a game mechanic, like a Z battle card or an ultimate, those will be removed from the game. Everything else, so you negate all of their skills, and then you gain control over that card. So this is very good. So you're bottom decking a card to essentially take another card. So it is essentially like you're playing a card. It's kind of the same concept. The other effect is you remove all 7 Dragon Balls from the game, and then this card gets triple attack. And the auto of this card for attacking and drawing a card is not once per turn, meaning you do get to draw 3 cards in a turn. So a lot of the time that is, I don't want to say your win condition, but it is a way to sort of push through some floodgates, because a lot of floodgates make you bottom deck a card or Z charge a card. This is just allowing you to continue to replace that card without actually losing value. I would say the biggest problem with this deck, and is why I don't think it's going to be a top tier black deck as of right now, is it needs a Z leader. A lot of leaders are going to be 20k now, and a leader that can only go to 15k isn't as terrifying as if this was a 20k leader that could swing 3 times, right? So once this leader gets a Z leader of some sorts, this deck will probably end up being, if not the best black deck in the game, it might be one of the best decks in the format, just whenever that actually happens. So this deck right now can beat probably in this current format that we're in, can probably beat almost every deck that's in the format. So first thing, these are not really part of the Z deck, but we just have the token realm. Obviously, we're going to be playing the token gate. There's also another card in the deck that interacts with tokens, so you got to make sure that you have your cool shining tokens. And then for the Z deck, this Z deck is very awful because, again, this Demon Realms, if you're not running the new Champ Toa card, you don't really have a good Z card to use. So we have one Fu, which is in here as just a barrier card. So being able to play this guy out as a barrier deflect, which can be used to hit a lot of yellow effects. So like the Frieza that negates a card skill. For the Trunks 3-drop that can tap it down, you can just play this instead. It's a really awful play, but it is just a play that you can do. We have one Goku. It's a 15k crit, and then it gains 5k for every, I think it's 6 or 7 cards. Yes, for every 7 cards in your warp. Probably not going to play it, but you just put it in there just to kind of fill the deck requirements list. One Pan, again, you're probably not going to play it, but these are once we get actual good Z battle cards, these will probably be removed. One Vegeta, this does come up sometimes. You do need to take a life just to push for a little extra. You just need, 2 extra cards in your hand to be able to push for game. And then the only Z battle card you're probably going to play is going to be Boo. Boo is insane. 5-drop blocker, and then you can remove another Z battle card. You remove another Z energy to absorb any of your opponent's battle cards. And then it gains 20k to the end of your opponent's next turn. So this becomes a 25k 1-drop. This card is insane, yeah. And you can't play more than... you can't activate the activate main more than once. You can't like play one of these, swing with it, and then play another one to do the same effect. So it is only one of these per turn, but it's still a very powerful card in itself. So that is the Z deck. Figured we get that out of the way because that's kind of the worst part of the deck. So we have the Dragon Balls. So these are the Dragon Balls here. So you have 3 of the Yearning for the Dark Dragon Ball, and Yearning for the Dark. Yearning for the Dark Dragon Balls, and then you have 4 of the Dark Empire Strikes Back. So this card is your typical Dragon Ball. This is actually what came out with the leader. It has 2 different effects. So one, it has Dragon Ball, obviously. So that means you can only have 7 total Dragon Balls in your deck. This has 2 different effects: to activate main and activate battle. So the activate main is you give any card 5k during the battle, and it's not limit 1, so you can combo all 3 of these to give a card 15k if you want to. The other effect is activate main. You put this card in the drop, and you can choose your opponent chooses one of their 1-drop battle cards and sends it to the warp. That's pretty cool. So one card in this that people typically side in against Mechkbura is BMS, because there's a lot of cards that are played off skills, and it makes it very annoying, you would say, quote unquote. But this card, you can just search it off your leader and then just make them warp it. If they want to waste the energy, you can also just get rid of 1-drop cantrips. There's a lot of 1-drop archetype starters as well, so just being able to warp them is pretty cool. This card came out as a I won't say an expansion promo, but it came out in the little booster box, the smaller boxes that came out with the set. So this is kind of what makes the deck function very well. So it's a 1-cost extra card, but if your leader is this leader and only this leader, has to be a Mechkbura only, right? No, it just has to be so it has to be a black Mechkbura with the wish skill, which is what he has on the front side. I mean, he has on the back side. You discard this, and then you discard 1 Dragon Ball or 1 Demon or Demon Realm race. You draw 2 cards. So you cycle 2 cards, and then your opponent warps the battle card from the drop. Very powerful. So this allows you to, your opponent puts something in the drop area, they use a searcher or whatever, you can then use this to just warp it and get rid of it. Now they choose, so if they have multiple, you don't get to choose the card, they have to choose it, but you have multiple of these, so you're going to run it. You're probably going to resolve, depending on how quickly you're going to awaken, you're probably going to resolve 3 of these in a game. And then the other ones will probably end up getting put in the drop for some reason. So, but you should always search off the top. If you have balls in your life, you should take those out first. But you should at least try to grab 2 of these. If you have some of these in your hand already, you want to grab the Yearning Ball so you can just get out of the deck, and then you can use this to discard this card. I'm sure someone's gonna say in the comments, this is just my secret rare. I don't like removing it from the sleeve constantly, so that's why it's pink. But when I play with the deck, it is orange. You guys can tell. So, so we have these are the old deck starter awakened starters here. So let me put the pre-release guy on top here. So we have three of the Shroom and 2 of the Toa. So these cards used to be maxed out at 4 of, but now we have better awakeners, so we don't need these at 4. So these cards can only be played if you have 2 or more Dragon Balls in the drop. So if you use your activate main effect to warp to remove the 7 Dragon Balls and give you your triple attack on the next turn, you cannot play these cards. These cards are now dead. So that's why these cards aren't nearly as good, and we don't need them. They're just better cards in the deck now. So both of these guys come down for 1 black. They're both under 15k, which is why I said the BMS quote unquote is a good and bad target. But then these cards look through your deck and they put up to 2 Dragon Balls in the drop from your deck and you shuffle. So these are one way you actually can get your awaken off quicker. So if you're probably going to use or have about between 4 and 5 Dragon Balls in your hand typically, unless you hit like the nuts and you hit every single Dragon Ball. This will allow you to dump the other 2, so then you can awaken and continue on with the game. So this card comes down, it warps any battle card on board. Your opponent then warps a card from their hand and draws a card. So both of these have the same effect of being able to make your opponent warp 1 and draw 1 from hand. This just has the ability of just sniping any card. So again, being able to snipe 1-drops, being able to snipe literally anything, including tokens and secret rares and Z battle cards. This card is absolutely nuts, and it's a blocker. The blocker part doesn't matter too much because a lot of matchups is just going to get removed. But being able to pay 1 to remove literally anything, and then they have to warp a card from their hand and draw 1 is good, especially early. A lot of people will try to craft their hands early off the mulligan, and being able to warp and kind of interrupt that is a very, very annoying thing to do. People do not like warping their card from their hands. So Salsa is the same way. Comes down, your opponent warps a card, draw 1. Now this card has a kind of a weird limit 1 effect. So when this card swings, your opponent warps a battle card from the drop. Regardless of if they warp a battle card or not, this card draws you a card. And it says you can't activate autos on this card for the turn. So again, like if you play this, play it, your opponent warps 1, draw 1. If you swing at this and draw 1, you can't play this. You can play this guy for 1, but then it doesn't get any effect. So if you have 2 of these in your hand and you want to play both, you'll probably slam both of them down to get the warp 2 draw 2, and then you'll swing with 1 of them to get the draw effect. And then this one you can still swing with, you just won't get the effect off. So, but that's why we kind of cut these down, because again, there are just better cards in the deck that kind of replace these. But they're still needed, unfortunately. There is another card that's a Shroom. It warps a 3 or less and warps a battle card from your opponent's drop area. They need 2 energy, I believe, for the effect to work. That card is something that I've toyed around with putting in the side deck, because it is an actual very interesting card in some matchups. But it just didn't make its space into the main deck. I believe the main deck is 54 cards. I've cut this list down from 60. You do not need to run this deck at 60. This is kind of a black aggro deck in a lot of senses. So you want to be able to hit the non-Demon Realm cards in your deck as quick as possible, and cutting the list down, which as much as this deck draws, you're going to see literally everything. So one of the new cards that helps with Self-Awakening is the Dark King Mechkbura, ruler of the Demon Realm. So this card's a crazy good. So you play it for 1. This card searches your deck and then adds 1 Dark Dragon Ball to your hand, and then you can discard up to 1 Dark Dragon Ball from your deck to your drop area. So this also gets rid of 2 balls. But this card also allows you to look through your deck, turn 1, and have a play if you're not able to awaken, or if you don't have Dark Dragon Balls in your hand to use. So this is very good. There is talk of putting it up to 4. But after you awaken, this card is just going into the drop area. So playing this card after you awaken is just not useful. So that's why we only run it at 3. The activate mana on this card is very, very good. So limit 1, 3 black. You warp this card from your drop area. You then get to choose a card in your opponent's drop area and send it to the warp, which is very powerful. So you can choose any battle card in the drop area. And then you get to play an 8-drop Mechkbura that has 30k power from your hand or your drop area, and then it gains barrier for the turn. So we'll go over that card later on in the deck. That's one of your big boss monsters. We'll grab this card back after that. But this allows you to play out one of your boss monsters for 1 energy cheaper. I believe the 8-drop at the 4 cost to play, and this makes it a 3 cost. You also do need 4 energy, so you still have to have 4 energy. You still have to do it on turn 4. You can't do it turn 3. You still need 4 energy in order to play it, but you're just playing it for 1 energy less, which is still very good. And then we have the 2 new best cards in the deck that make this deck, I think, competitively viable, is the new Salsa and Shroom Violent Majin Assault. So we'll go over the Salsa first, because this card has a lot of, like, the Shroom is good by itself, but this card I went up from 2 to 3 and then from 3 to 4, and I don't think I'll ever remove this card from 4. This card is completely disgusting. So it's a 15k crit. If this card's removed from the battle area, it gets removed from game instead, which makes sense, because at the second effect, you can play this card from your hand or your drop area if you have 2 or more energy, which means the Shroom here will go really quickly. Your opponent needs 2 energy in order to play Shroom, I believe. Yeah, so your opponent needs 2 energy in order to play Shroom. This allows you to aggress your opponent when they tap out on turn 1 and you went first. This allows you to have a 15k crit on turn 2. So this card you can play from your drop area. So one, obviously, probably the best play is going to be discarding it off of the ball here to draw 2, and then you play this guy from your drop area, right? So when you play this card from your drop area, or when this card's played, your opponent just warps 1 and draws 1, so it has the same effect as the other Salsa. And now this is a 15k crit going at your leader. They're going to take this damage. It's like in the green Gohan deck. Your opponent's not going to combo out of a 20k crit on turn 1. They're not going to combo out of this. If they combo out of it, that's great. They just lost 2 cards from hand. You did the same effect. The effect is you want them to put battle cards in their drop area. So if you crit a damage, card goes to the drop area. If you swing this, then they combo out. That's 1 card at least going to the drop area. The other one's probably going to go to the Z deck. But now that allows you to activate the rest of your balls, which will then warp those cards from the drop area. So you're kind of it's kind of like a catch-22. Like they're comboing out of something, so they're losing cards from hand. Then you're also getting rid of the drop area, which a lot of decks need for Overwhelm, for Sparking, for other effects from the drop area. So this card is very, very good. You need to run it at 4. The Shroom is just as good, maybe a little bit better. This card actually replaces the red Salsa as the 4 of draw 1. So this card is a 20k, already better because all the other ones are 15k or less. When this card swings, you get to warp any battle card on board that's 7 or less. So removal, very powerful. And then if your opponent has 2 or more cards in the warp, which they will, you'll draw a card. Again, this is a limit 1. You cannot activate this more than once, and you can't play more than one of these in the turn. They're both limit 1s. That's the worst part about this card. If they did not do that, I would probably just be playing this deck, because being able to slam down 2 of these on turn 2 and then swing twice for 20k and then warping 2 things and then drawing 2 things would be very good. And Bandai just decided not to give us that ability. So this is a card you need in your hand. You cannot play this from the drop area, but this is a card you would rather play from the drop area. So this card goes to the drop. I would definitely discard this. This is also a very good combo card. You can combo this off, go to the Z deck, use it to play Majin Buu, put this in the drop, and then tap 1 to play this from the drop. So this has a lot more flexibility. This has to be played from hand. I believe so, right? Yeah, it has to be played from hand. Make sure I wasn't tripping. An oldie, but a very expensive card now. It's like, I think the last time I checked, it was like $12, which is stupid. So the Supreme Kai here, this is an old promo, maybe 2-3 sets ago, maybe. So it's a 10k Servant. You can play this as the same effect as the other Self-Awakeners. You need to have 2 Dragon Balls in the drop to play it. This will cycle your deck up to 2 Dark Dragon Balls. You put them in the drop area. And then this card makes your opponent warp a card on play, but it's a limit 1 that says, when this card's played, you warp 1, or when you gain control over one of your opponent's cards using one of your skills, using a leader skill, I think it is. No, just when you gain control over one of your opponent's cards, they warp a card. So this is very good as well. So being able to like play this, make them warp a card, and then go into Shroom to make them, you know, to have a 15k crit on board. This is incredibly nasty on turn 2. This has Servant, so once this card is in rest mode, it cannot restand. So that is one of the problems of this card. But we now run 4 of this Mechkbura, which turns this card into a warp 1 to kind of like a +2. So this is going to warp a card from your opponent's hand. Mechkbura has Overlord, meaning we can bottom deck this to draw another card. So this card here says it's a 1-drop cantrip. Draws a card, and then has Overlord. When you activate Overlord, you get to play a Demon Realm token on the board. So you will play this, draw a card, you'll bottom deck this, draw a card, you'll play this, and then you got the now you get a free 5k on board. So for 1 energy, you drew 2 cards and then created 10k combo 10k worth of combo power. So this card's crazy. This is what we use now. We do not run a Unison in the deck. This kind of replaces our Unison because for 1 energy, we can do basically what the Bardock does for 2 energy. And this card can be discarded off the ball. It's also combo power as all the way through the game. And Bardock just felt like a really bad turn 2 play. This feels like a way better turn 2 play. And we wanted to run a little more Servant, so we run 2 of the Berserk Goku, just 2. There's a lot of Koitsukai running around. And this card, you can't really combo it on defense if the Koitsukai, because if you play it, unless it's a black deck, you're going to warp 2. It's really bad. But being able to play this guy for 1, making it a 25k double striker, swinging in with it for 25k double strike, and then using the Mechkbura then to bottom deck it to draw is very good. So this is kind of your Servant package here. Unfortunately, these 2 cards are not searchable. Or these cards aren't, you can't grab these off of any of your effects. These are not these are not Demon Realms. So that's kind of the only downside to them, but they're your good tech slots. And again, the Mechkbura just makes this deck flow very easily now with not having to run a Unison, so because you're at least able to draw consistently every turn if the card stays on board. For Toas, this is the super combo of choice. It's just Sparking 5. We're going to have Sparking 5 in there probably turn 2. So this card's going to be live turn 2. That's really it. Vegeta, I don't think it's needed. I've killed a lot of people. I've killed people at 8 life. Like, no BS. Like, it's... now, you ask how that happens, it's just very strange how that can actually happen. But I've killed a lot of people. I would say the majority of the games that I've won over 4 life. And then Vegeta's not even live. So because we're kind of an aggro deck, being at 4 life is not always a possibility unless you have more than 2 Dragon Balls in there, or they're trying to swing down you instead of clearing your board. So just having this available very early is just good. And it kind of fits the theme, being a Demon Realm. So I have 4 tech slots here. So these are 2 cards that I utilize a lot in this deck, and they weren't really made for this deck, but they do have some very interesting mechanics that work with this deck. So we have Shroom and Salsa. So this is a card that's actually made for the Shroom and Salsa deck, but it does a very interesting thing in this deck. So the middle effect, your leader has to be Shroom and Salsa, so we're going to ignore that. If your opponent has no battle cards in the drop area, you can pay 1 colorless to play this card from your hand. This card does not have a limit 1 or activate main limit 1 or anything else like that, like once per turn. The permanent, if your opponent has 4 more cards in the warp, this card becomes a double striker. So if your opponent has no cards in the warp, you can actually slam down 2 of these for 2 energy, and you have 2 20k double strikes if they have more than 4 cards, which the more likely they're going to, if you're playing the deck correctly. So there's some matchups where this deck just won't come down, which is fine because now you have a permanent charge target or a target you can pitch off of your ball if you don't have a Salsa. So it's just there to fill that sort of gap. This deck sometimes is hard to charge because every card in your hand feels really good. But if you see this card and they have like 2 or 3 cards in the drop area, you're just going to charge this card. Now the Poutine. So the Poutine's very cool. Shout out to Tyler Stapleton. He's been on the channel before. He's the 7Q guy. He actually showed me this card, and I thought it was, at first I didn't really understand it, and I kind of read it a little more. I'm like, okay, this actually is kind of cool. So the activate main we don't do because our leader's not Toa. The auto on here says you combo this card, you remove a skillless card from the game that you control, and you draw a card. So you used to create skillless cards a lot with the Mirror Unison, which I think I have the Mirror Unison over here, just so you can use it as reference. So the Mirror Unison, you used to use the leader effect to take a card. That card now becomes skillless. And in the Mirror, you would +1 to remove a skillless card from the game and then draw a card and warp something. So you could warp the card that you took from your opponent because it is a skillless for the game. So it fits the criteria. But we don't want to pay 3 for this card anymore because how the game works, paying 3 for this is just no bueno. Poutine kind of does the same thing, but now this is also combo power. So you can combo this card, and if you have a skillless that you took from your opponent, you can pop that card after you swing with it, and then draw the card, and then you can use this to Z-charge. That's really cool. The one downside, you cannot pitch this card off of the ball effect because this is an evil wizard, not a demon realm or a demon realm race, which is, it's weird how they categorize some of these cards. But that's what it's in here for. Also, this card can also be used as a charge target if your opponent's not playing 4 or lesses. So this is just another slot that you can use for charging. But again, this is actually a really cool mechanic because sometimes you don't have the free ability that we'll show later on in the game where you can take your opponent's skills to do something with it. So sometimes you just take it, swing with it, swing with something else, then use this to combo it. That way you can gain the value from it. So we got those. One kind negate. Battle card negates right now with how much yellow plays T-Blow. This card's not as good. Blue, a lot of blue players are playing Desperate Measures. So this card's just not as good. And also, you have to actually fill up their drop area. So this card's not really live until maybe turn 2 or turn 3 maybe in some games. More likely turn 2, but a lot of games it happens turn 3. So just having one. This could also be like your petrification slot as well. So I wouldn't be mad about this, but this just has combo power. So your actual negate package for the extra cards, you have 3 Darkest Judgment and then 2 Sword of the Dark Empire. Obviously your token negate. This card here does a lot. So it's either a 1-cost negate, just a hard negate, or activate main if it's your opponent's turn. Your leader is this Mechkbura leader, and your opponent has 3 or more cards in their warp. I think it's 3. Is it 3 or 2? Yeah, it's 3. You can activate the Activate Battle for free. So this gives any black card. I want to say. Nope, any of your cards. Yeah, so give any of your cards 5k. So this is very cool. This gives them 5k for the turn. So this becomes a black bean that you can use for free. So this is a good defensive piece. If you're playing against an aggro deck, you can slap down 2 of these. You go to 25, and then your opponent has to combo out above that to actually deal damage. That's very good. So we only play 3 just because of deck space. I would probably side a 4th one just to have it. But also it is just a very good hard negate. Sometimes turn 1, like your opponent's turn 1, like you're playing against Gohan, they go first, they put a Vegeta underneath, you swing a leader. You don't want to play something to tap out to take the crit. You can use this to negate it. If they play the Kaioken, you can use this to negate it. You can just get rid of, you can stop 1 crit attacker, which is sometimes enough. So it's good. The other negate is the Poutine Floodgate. This is crazy. I wish this was just a good black Floodgate, but they just leader locked it to this. 2 energy, you negate the attack, and then the auto window says you may bottom deck a card. If you do, your opponent has to warp 2 cards from their hand every time they wish to attack. So it's like a better topo. It's like the best version of like a black topo, or what a black topo would be. Again, everything's in the auto window, so T-Blow, Desperate Measures, this card gets hit by a lot. But against red, against green, against other black matchups, if they're not at 4 life or less, this is very good. This is just going to turn off a lot of aggro. And it is a demon realm if you need to, it is a demon race if you need to pitch it off your ball effect. Demon god, whatever it is. There's too many of those traits. Alright, so now we have the big boss monster, the 8 cost. So I'm going to pull back out the 1 drop so we can use it as reference. So, a Dark King Mechkbura, power restored. The 30k deflect double strike. You play it for 4 if your opponent has more. Then, I think it's just if your leader is this. Then if your opponent has 4 more cards in the warp, you play this. You warp your entire opponent's board. You don't get to choose the cards, which is kind of a problem sometimes. You don't choose the cards, so just everything that doesn't have barrier. And then you get to choose two cards with different names that are 7 or less from your opponent's warp, and then play them with their skills negated. Now, this doesn't proc. I'm going to grab it out because it's going to be a card we're going to probably use here in a second anyways. It does not proc this effect because you're not gaining control over it. You're playing them. It's just a wording issue. It's really stupid. Just to note, your leader effect will actually trigger the Kai because you are gaining control over the card. So you actually can take a card from them, bottom deck a card, take one of their battle cards, and then they warp a card. It's kind of cool. But to continue, yeah, so you would play this card for 4. The Mechkbura here allows you to play this for 3, and then it gives this guy Servant. I'm sorry, not Servant. It gives this guy Barrier. I saw the Servant card there. So you can use this. This is a good target to either combo or to pitch off of your ball, because you can play this from the drop area, so you don't really need this card in your hand anymore. And this card you activate from the drop, so you actually don't need either one of them in your hand. So you tap 3, warp a card from the you warp this from the drop, you warp a battle card from your opponent's drop area, you play this guy out. He gains barrier when he comes in, and then you wipe your entire opponent's board, and then you have a 30k double striker that also grants you 2 other cards as well. And then you can't play non-black battle cards for the turn, which is kind of important for the next card that we have in the deck. Which the next card is, we have one of Ginyu the Body Snatcher. So this is a very cool, I don't know if this was an intended interaction, but this is just hilarious. So it's a 20k double striker. Activate main. If you gain control, you choose one of the opponent's cards that you gain control of using a skill. You place it in their drop area and you play this card out for free. It's a 20k double striker. So this is essentially like another Overrealm, i.e. Like King Piccolo New Ruler. Essentially, you can play this card in the same sort of functionality to it. So the 20k double striker you play for free. Permanent, it gets minus 10k during your opponent's turn, but you're going to try to kill him with it anyways. So you can't actually play this card after you play Mechkbura. So if you play Mechkbura, you can't play non-black battle cards for the turn, so you can't play this guy. So you have to play it in either beforehand or you play it on a different turn. But that's why you only run one. It's just essentially just another Overrealm target, because we don't really Overrealm till our kill turn, so just another way to just push damage through. One of the Vegeta volley attack. This is the Overrealm of choice for the deck. So there's an argument you can just play Heated Fighting Spirit instead. I wouldn't be mad if you chose Heating Fighting Spirit instead. I'm just tired of unsleeving this card and taking it out and putting it in different decks. So I wanted to find a different Overrealm that was a 30k. Beyond All Limits wasn't really a good card for the deck, but this card actually does actually work. So there are some games where you might not be able to kill your opponent, or you can still probably kill them, but you just need to remove something on board. Let's say you swung at something and they token negated, and they have no other way of doing anything. You can slam this down, and this is a 30k. It says permanent. This card swings at a battle card if they have 2 or more energy. So this card can attack cards in active mode, like battle cards in active mode. So if this card swings at something, if it KOs a battle card, it restands. And then it can just keep swinging until you're not killing a battle card anymore. So your opponent plays, token negate, and they have no other way of defending themselves. You can use this, swing at the token, kill it, restand this, swing at their leader. It's an extra step. You can just play Heating Fighting Spirit to warp it and then swing at their leader too. But this is a winter stamp, and it's fire looking, so I wanted to play it. It's come down like 2 or 3 times. It's really cool. It's a very, very cool card. But like I said, you can just play Heated Fighting Spirit if you want. Does this job maybe a little bit better. This card can also clear boards if you like, let's say you're playing against a deck that has a bunch of blockers on board, and like playing a Heated Fighting Spirit wouldn't do anything. You can play this and then just swing at all of their blockers and just kill everything. And then they either lose cards from hand, waste like a negate again, which is fine, but just kind of forces them to have more resources. And then our secret rare that I did not sleeve in the orange sleeve today because I didn't feel like it is Evil Saiyan. You can play Mechkbura secret rare as well. We tested that. It felt okay, but getting 7 in the total between you and your opponent is kind of difficult because you don't warp cards. Because if you use this too early and you haven't used your balls, all the balls go now to the warp. You can't activate your leader effect, so it's kind of a problem. But this card is insane. So you're probably gonna play this card for 2 from your hand. So 1 interaction, obviously. You burn a life from your opponent. You warp a card from their board, ignoring barrier, and then you take one of their cards from the drop and play it, right? With the skills negated. Second part is your opponent plays a battle card 7 or less. You gain control over it. This will also trigger your Kai effect, which is pretty sweet. So you can make them warp another card if they play something, especially if they play something on your turn. It'll happen a lot where your opponent will play like a Floodgate or something, or a battle card. You'll take it, and then this will then make them warp a card. So they lose another card from hand. It's really funny. But this is the best black secret rare. If you don't own this card, you should not be playing black. It's just you're not really getting the same sort of push and like tempo kill turn that you would be getting if you played this card. So if you don't have this card, you need to buy it. If you don't have this card, play a different color. That's not trying to be mean. It's just you're not really optimally playing black if you don't own this card, or at least if you can't test with it, because then you can find out maybe there's a better secret rare, but you have to, I would say you need to own this card. So that is the Mechkbura list. I'll leave a deck list planet list down below. I also will have, it should be coming out probably around the same time as this video. For those who have subscribed to the Patreon, I'm starting to upload more, not necessarily deck profiles on Patreon, but I'm going to be doing just guides to decks that I play or decks that I find interesting, that I kind of invested a lot of time into. A lot of those are going to be black at the start here just because I play mainly black, but there will be a guide to playing this list, and it will be an evolving guide. So I will put it out as what I have now, and then I will consistently add more content to that particular post, while not trying to make other posts of the same leader essentially. So I will just continue to make content for that post and just add timestamps and everything so you can continue to view it. It'll just be some evolving content. I feel like that's a good way of doing things like this. So if you guys want to check that out, that should be down below in the link for the Patreon if you guys want to start checking out. I'm trying to add more content to that. I have some ideas for when the digital client comes out, which will utilize Patreon a little bit more. But that's for a different video here. But thank you guys for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Like and subscribe if you did. If you're really excited to play this leader, if you guys found some cool other interactions, please let me know about that. And as always, thank you guys for the support, and I'll see you guys in the next video.